Okay, today we are going to try to finalize some thoughts from the discussion and the assignments on Canvas last week. We're not completely done with those. Make sure you're keeping up to date on the announcements and home pages found on Canvas to be sure that you're doing everything on time. But we'll try to avoid dealing with those kind of due date issues in videos like this because we want to just focus on the content. So keep reading what you need to do and focus on this stuff here. So there's a few things that I want to make sure that we understand about understanding media before moving on to the analysis type of work we're going to be building toward this week. One thing that a lot of you are getting close to, and if not actually addressing in the comments and replies on your discussion so far, are these three building blocks of a text. Now, in this class, you guys should get comfortable with thinking of the word text as anything we can read, and by read, we mean anything that can be interpreted. So music is a text, a painting is a text. Anything you're referring to as a source for what you are interpreting is a text, okay? Now, these weren't exactly three specific bullet pointed things in the video you watched, but these are the three that I kind of think will give you the best idea of what we need to understand before moving on. So the three things to be aware of are the intended message of a text, the intended effect of a text, and the medium used to deliver that text, okay? So understanding these three aspects of a text will help you in a few different ways. It's going to help you understand how reliable the source is, how you can evaluate that source in the first place. It's going to help you be less vulnerable to persuasion by media that lies to you. And eventually, as you'll see throughout our lesson today, it's going to help you analyze things and read them through your own insights and observations. So as far as those first parts go, though, and dealing with the validity of texts and understanding texts, let's talk about how this helps you understand accuracy in sources. For example, if I'm reading a news article and I can tell, so that's already part of the medium, right? A news article. And I can tell that the writer is trying to be very negative and say that the world is falling apart, maybe. That's going to give me an effect of this author, whatever they're telling me, is trying to show me that something is wrong in the world and they know what it is and we should be alarmed about it. Okay. Now, if we look at the message itself and we see it's about how dumb millennials won't stop putting avocados on their toast and crazy Zoomers won't stop making really depressing memes. We can come to a few conclusions by looking at just those parts of this, which could be anything from maybe this writer is really old and just out of touch. Maybe the writer has no idea what millennials aren't spending money on that their generation maybe did, like houses or cars, or basically just a general idea that avocados are not that big of an expense compared to other things. Maybe they don't understand that Zoomers are just silly jokesters and aren't as depressed as they think. Or they could be totally right and say millennials are absolutely insane for spending all this money on expensive toast when we need to be saving money for things like houses and cars. And Zoomers have sincere mental health issues that need to be addressed and cared for. The way we figure that out is by looking at the rest of the publications by this news company or by this author. And we see, are they always in a panic mode? Are they only being dramatic to get clicks? Why is it being delivered in this way? Just by doing these three steps, understanding these three parts that build up that text, we get a really good a good jumping point for analyzing where we think this article is going, which leads us to the analysis itself. Okay, and this is where we're going to move into more of the literature and English language arts side of this skill. But it's really important to know that the reason that we emphasize literature so much is because it gives you these skills for real life. If you can analyze and observe and understand a crazy old play from the 1500s, then you'll probably also be decent at analyzing what news sources are valuable and reliable as you go through life. So while we go back and forth between real world examples and literary examples, just make sure you understand that it's the same skill that you're working over and over. So here's what we're going to focus on. Okay, it's the use of insights and complexity in developing an analysis. These are all really big words, but let's just break them down. When I say using your insights, it means what small little things are you learning as you go through a text that help you understand something about it. We'll get into examples of this, but basically, you just need to be aware that this stuff happens almost automatically. This is why we have you guys take notes and pay close attention when we read, because the insights just kind of pop in your head as you're going through. As we do that, we have to be aware of the fact that since so many different kinds of insights are possible, many different meanings or readings of the same text are also possible. With that many different kinds of readings, you automatically create a complex text. If you and me can read the same exact article and come to completely different understandings of what it's saying, even though it says the same exact thing, then this is a complicated text. And complicated doesn't mean hard to understand or anything like that. It just means that there is not one single way to say, I am right and I have figured it out. So the reason we have to be aware of that is because while we use our explanations of our insights, we have to address that complexity to develop a fair analysis. But if we use a really good explanation of our insights, regardless of the fact that it's complicated and some other people might see something different, we make a really meaningful analysis. So to have a fair, meaningful analysis, make sure that you are really using all your insights that you can while addressing that complexity. Let's get into more specific examples of how this works by going through this example of someone's literary analysis of Jingle Bells, Batman Smells. I'm not going to read you this entire article. I have it linked on the page where you found this video if you care to go through it and look at it, but I will cover a few of the main points that it's making, okay? So, this thing to keep in mind here is that if you were to take a very, very general approach to this and you just read the song lyrics out loud, you would think it's just a silly song that kids would sing to have a laugh that sounds kind of like a real traditional Christmas song. But the way this author pulls an entire article out of such a weird example is by really diving into the details of what they think about every single part of the song that they can. So first off, for example, the original song Jingle Bells came out in like the 1850s, which by itself sounds like an old traditional long-standing carol date. And then this parody comes out in the 1960s, which is known for being a crazy, non-traditional time in history. So right off the bat, it becomes this kind of rebellious song, and then they use a bunch of examples that help prove that it is a song of rebellion and chaos instead of just a silly joke song. One really important example that they use is that our very first intro to a famous television character, Bart Simpson, is him singing this song. It also is tied to chaotic times in children's lives where they're waiting for their favorite holiday to come, but it's also a slow drag of the season as they count down days and are reminded every day that they're being watched, and if they're not good all the time, they're not going to have their favorite day of the year. So there's just this intense setup for the song before we even get into the lyrics itself that have to do with when it was published, when the thing it's ripping off was published, and what kind of spirit it kind of fits into with the season. And that's all before the author even addresses the actual text itself. So that kind of shows you that how messages are conveyed and in what way and when and why and where is enough to even start your analysis. But then you can really just get away with it as you go into the details of the song itself, which the author does by making fun of a few different lines like robin laying an egg, which could be a pun for a bird laying an egg because robins are also birds, which is a joke about the fact that the superheroes in the Batman stories don't actually have superpowers. So if Robin has a superpower, his only power is laying an egg, which is useless in fighting crime, at least as far as I'm aware. And that just kind of serves as a really good example of finding one little line in the text that you're reading, or one little aspect of the painting you're looking at, or anything at all where you can say, hey, this is a bigger idea than just what it says. This is what it made me think of. This is my insight about it. But then the author also addresses the complexity of that reading by not stating that that's the only way you can read this song, and never claiming that this song was written to embody the chaos of the Christmas season for children, but instead saying this is one way you could read it. In fact, when they write about the laying egg pun, they also admit that it might not be a pun, because another euphemism commonly used is laying an egg, which just means like you did a bad job. Like if you try to take a test in school and you get a 0, you laid an egg. So that could have been another reading, and that's addressed. But the most important way for me that the complexity is addressed is in the final sentence at the bottom here. Thus, Batman Smells serves as the important role of being a little escape hatch for our inner kindergartners from the traditional crushing efforts staying on the nice list. Okay, the reason this is really important is because most people would cap off their articles or papers or whatever by saying like, here is what this story means, or here is what this art is about. And that's kind of what's happening, but the really important trick here comes right here. The song serves the important role. It doesn't say the song is an escape for kindergartners. It doesn't say the song is a rebellion against traditional efforts of staying on the nice list. All it says is, if you think about it through the insights that I've provided, it shows you one way it could be an escape. Okay, so that's just one example of using insights and explaining the complexity well enough to have a really meaningful contribution of things to say about a topic without claiming that you know everything about it. Okay, if you go back to the page at the bottom, here's an example that I did real quick of identifying the 3 building blocks of media, and then using just that building block method to start an analysis. I'm not going to read through this either, because you have the freedom to do so on your own. And just remember that if you don't really read through this carefully right now, which I hope you do, when we have an assignment that is very similar to this layout, you can refer back to it and come fill these out and like use this as a jumping point for that as well. And then I go on to show you how I would continue to analyze that same text using insights and addressing complexity, rather than only dealing with those building blocks as stated before. Last thoughts for the day. This is also on your main page, but just wanted to address it real quick. These 2 weeks, we're trying to help you develop an understanding of what media is, what it means to have a message, what it means to be a text, how those are communicated, why we use different mediums for different messages, and how to begin using your understanding of that, of media as a whole, to develop your own insights and analysis about texts. Okay? Let me know if you guys have questions. Contact me through Canvas or by my email, this one to be exact. And we'll see you guys next week and throughout the discussions we have.